t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'as fait manquer, Bruxelles, je t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime. T'es ma préférée, Bruxelles, je t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime.
Hello and welcome to Brussels, my love, our weekly talk show from the heart of Europe, where we break down the ups and downs of EU policymaking. This week from the European Parliament in Strasbourg. I'm Stefan Grobe. Thanks for tuning in. Coming up this week, Europe needs to be able to defend itself against Russia with or without the United States. That's the consensus in Brussels in light of Donald Trump's increasing alignment with the Kremlin. The EU reacted with proposals for massive defense spending programs worth 800 billion euros. Other countries like the United Kingdom, Canada and Turkey are part of the process too. Are Europeans ready for a new geopolitical reality? And Trump's long-term vision of replacing taxes with tariffs has already caused nervousness among consumers and among investors who hate nothing more than uncertainty. Yet Washington keeps punishing its major trading partners, Canada and Mexico, only to grant deferrals or exemptions the next morning. Meanwhile, the EU hit back at Trump's imposed 25% global steel and aluminum tariffs, announcing retaliation. Can a trade war still be avoided? A lot of tough questions for our guests today. All three of them are members of the European Parliament, and here they are. Pekka Toveri from the European People's Party from Finland, Li Andersson from the Left Group, also from Finland, and Krzysztof Śmiszek from the Socialists and Democrats from Poland. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
But before we get started, let's take a look at what was just unthinkable for generations on both sides of the Atlantic, a European defense without the United States.
When the Berlin Wall came down, Europe was jubilant. It symbolized the end of the Cold War and the beginning of chronic underinvestment in defense. Many European countries stopped mandatory military service and reduced arsenals and troop strength. The gaps were filled by 100,000 US troops and nuclear weapons under the NATO umbrella. That era seems to be coming to an end. Trump's dizzying changes to the post-war order leaves European leaders scrambling to reorganize Europe's own defense, no matter the hefty price tag. The aim is twofold: to continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine and to be ready for the moment that may or may not come. The moment America turns its back on Europe completely. Is Europe finally waking up and smelling the coffee brewing in Washington and Moscow?
So let's say Europe is smelling the coffee, Pekka, but is it ready to drink it?
I'm pretty sure that they are. That the awareness have come that something has broken in the transatlantic link. I firmly believe that we will have some kind of relationship in the United States also in the future. We had it for 75 years. After the next presidential election, we're probably going to return to something more normal. But I think that something has been broken so that Europe doesn't trust the Americans the way we used to trust anymore. And that means that we have to be more stronger, more independent in the future.
Yeah. Lee, you're also from Finland. Do you share your countrymen's point of view here?
I do. In this regard, I do. I absolutely think that Europe should be ready and able to stand on its own feet. If we talk about security, if we talk about energy, or if we talk about digital economy. So if we want to talk about sovereignty for Europe, we must also remember that security is not only military defense, it is a larger concept. So reducing dependencies on the US, I think, should be a strategic goal for the EU, as long as we remember that it does not only mean defense, it also means other things, other tools that we need to work with.
Yeah. Krzysztof, these close military and economic ties between the United States and Europe are unparalleled in modern history. Can it be easily replaced?
Well, this kind of situation is not easy. Never it's easy. So, I mean, we all feel and we all sends out that something has changed. Not only something, a lot of things has changed after Trump took over the rules. And you know what? I mean, we are third economy of the world. European Union has 500 million people living here, and we should look mostly at ourselves, at our capabilities, how to strengthen ourselves, how to invest our money into our infrastructure. Don't look around, you know, who can help us. Of course, the alliances are extremely important, and most of the European Union countries are members of NATO. US is a member of NATO as well. So we need to do most to maintain good relations with the US, but we see that the only thing that we can be certain of is that Trump administration is totally uncertain.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm really happy that the European Parliament, European institutions are so much now investing in our infrastructure, and we are looking at ourselves.
What military advantage does Trump get by sidelining NATO in order to make potentially big projects with Russia?
I think the problem is that Trump is not very interested in NATO. He's not very interested in multilateralism at all. I think he looks at himself as this great leader of a global military superpower. And when you say that the US is uncertain, I would say that it seems to me that Trump is pretty certain about where his new alliances are. He has been realigning US policy to be aligned with the Kremlin and the policies of Putin. So I think the goal for Europe should be for us to be able to act independently, whether it is a new European security architecture within the realm of the EU, or this coalition of the willing, or within NATO, to be able to act autonomously without the US. Because clearly Europe cannot trust Trump.
Defending Europe without the US. Is it doable? Is it desirable?
I'd say that just today it's not very doable. You know, our problem is that we have more military than more soldiers than Russia have. We have more tanks, we have more fighters, we have much more maritime power and naval power. But the command and control, intelligence, long-range engagement capability, strategic airlift, strategic air refueling, all these joint capabilities are concentrated on the United States' hands. So without the United States today, we would have, if we would go to war without the United States, we would have 2 million soldiers running around in Europe, which we don't have proper capabilities to give them intel so that we know what we need to do, and we don't have command and control to control them.
Yeah.
And that's our biggest problem. And what we need to build now is the joint capabilities so that we can, as Lee said, to do it independently without the United States if needed. Of course, if we have a choice, I would go to, if there would be a military confrontation, I would go with the United States if possible.
I read somewhere a military expert saying that Europe could, as of today, not defeat the Russians if they attack us, but they can barely hold them at the border for 2, maybe 3 weeks, and that's it.
I totally disagree.
Well, that is why we as Europe, as European Union, that is why we should be so much focused on supporting Ukraine. We all know what's going on at the border of European Union, and Ukraine, is defending not only themselves but also European Union, also European values. So that is why a crucial thing is first to provide as much assistance to Ukraine as possible, to organize a network of allies around Ukraine, global leaders around Ukraine, to have Ukraine independent and safe. Ukraine is kind of buffer zone between Russia and European Union. That is why the priority number one is to mobilize European Union around Ukrainian cause.
I'm not sure they like to hear that, but you were before. Let me go to Pekka first, and then Lee.
Yeah, I'm a little bit tired of this Russians are coming thing. You know, Russia can threat us with what? 90% of the Russian army is tied up in Ukraine, getting weaker every day. The air force is a shadow of the European air forces. The naval power well, they were beaten in Black Sea with a country which don't have a navy. Russia is not an existential military threat to Europe today, and not in 5 years' time if we do even half of what we are planning to do. They have nuclear weapons, that's a real threat, but otherwise the conventional military power...
5 years would take us just after Trump's term, right?
I was also going to say that I think these kinds of comments are a bit weird, taking into consideration that the Ukrainians have been able to keep their ground for 3 years already, saying that Europe could not hold out for more than a week or two.
Right.
So I don't agree with that statement. But if we look at what's going to happen in the next 5 years, for example, I think that one thing the EU should do now is to say that we will not direct any more EU member state funding for the US arms industry in a situation where Trump so clearly signals that he is not interested in European security. So let's redirect all the funding that has gone, and we know it depends a bit on different estimates, but more than half of EU member states' public procurement in defense has gone to US. So this money we should redirect into Europe to strengthen our own capabilities.
We've asked the question about Europe's defense capabilities to Stephen Everts, director of the EU Institute for Security Studies, and he has a very clear idea about it. Take a listen.
Of course, Europe can defend itself. There's nothing wrong with us genetically that we are incapable of doing so. But it requires a whole rethinking and reorganization about how we defend ourselves. There's this saying, the best moment to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best moment is today. And in the field of defense, it's a little bit the same. Of course, we're very dependent in some areas on America, on missile defense, on intelligence, on satellites, on communications. There are real dependencies. But we can also address these. There are also European programs that we now need to invest in, scale up. We need a crash program to address those vulnerabilities urgently. And I think we can get Europe in the position to really defend itself without America within 2 to 3 years. It's as much a question of manpower as it is about willpower.
All right, it's as much about manpower as it is about willpower. Do you agree?
Well, I'm definitely a big fan of mobilizing ourselves, and I fully agree with Lee, who said that we should stream the money into certain areas of production or infrastructure. And just to give you an example, cyber security is of utmost importance. My country, Poland, experiences 60,000 cyber attacks per year, mostly coming from Russia. Last week, one of the biggest Polish hospitals was attacked by cyber criminals. That shows that, I mean, we here in Europe, we are smart enough to build our systems, intelligence systems, to secure our people, our critical infrastructure against this newest weapon, which is cyber attacks.
This is a very good point, because I think what we've seen also during the last years is that energy can be used as a weapon. We also have digital threats that we need to be prepared for, and we also need to take care of our societal cohesion. And I think this is my kind of biggest worry also when we look at the plans of the Commission now. For example, they are changing the fiscal rules regarding deficits to enable more investment in defense. I understand that, but we also have other needs that are linked, for example, to the digital economy or to reducing our energy dependencies, both on Russia, because Europe is still buying, many European countries, fossil energy from Russia, but also from the US, actually, for Europe to become more strategically autonomous in the whole energy sector. So I absolutely think that the Commission should introduce the same possibility for more investment also when we talk about energy, the digital economy, and, for example, education. That's also a part of how we strengthen our preparedness.
Yeah, just one sentence. I mean, I fully agree with Ili. I would add something which is very much promoted by my political group, Socialists and Democrats. All the spendings cannot be made at the cost of the social benefits and social policies that we developed for decades in European Union, and we are known in the world as a welfare area. So, because if we employ some tools that will be detrimental to the social policies and welfare, the only group that will benefit from it will be populists, right-wing populists.
I also agree with this, actually. This is the second biggest problem,
Yep.
or the second big problem, I would say, because it's the member state now that are supposed to do these big defense investments. And if we end up in a situation where they finance it by cutting welfare and social benefits, we will create a new security problem internally in Europe.
Member states is a good question. Is anybody here who supports the idea of a European army?
No, that would be a bad investment. But I have to say that, and go back to what Lee said in the beginning, you know, I said that we have a good model in Finland because we talk about comprehensive security. We understand that the first thing you have to have is that every person has something to defend for, because it's about the will. If you don't have the will to defend, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So we have to take care of everybody. Then we have to build a comprehensive security where secure the whole society, not only military, but the whole society, because Russia wages war for the whole nation, against the whole nation, not only against your military.
Yeah.
And the military part is actually the easy part. You know, we all have armies, we all have defense industry building up this bigger, we know how to do it. But to fight the Russian hybrid warfare against the polarization of our societies, info operations, cyber attacks, sabotage, that's the difficult part, much more difficult.
We're seeing right now, especially in Germany, a lot of creative ideas of funding the rearmament, if you like. One other idea is funding European defense, the war in Ukraine, and Ukrainian reconstruction by using Russian assets being frozen in European accounts, most of them in Belgium. The idea is not new, but nothing has happened so far, mainly because of legal problems. Now, we have asked Frédéric Daupagne, professor of public international law at the Catholic University of Louvain. Here's what he told us. Take a listen.
Bottom line, the Russian sovereign assets are protected by immunity under international law. In principle, they cannot be confiscated. However, there are two potential justifications. First, you consider that Russia has committed an aggression and must bear the consequences, so we could use them to contribute to the reparation of damages. The second option is self-defense. In the shorter run, Ukraine needs military assistance. We would need to fill the gap following the suspension of the US military assistance. So these assets could be used potentially to finance that military assistance. The EU took the decision to freeze the assets. So now the decision is upon the EU.
So there is a possible legal avenue here by invoking Russian aggression and self-defense. Should Europe now just go ahead and do it?
Oh, definitely. I fully reject this long academic legal debates on whether we have that mandate to take this money and, you know, to use it for the purposes of Ukrainian support or not. And, I'm saying this as a lawyer and as a former deputy justice minister. We need to act now. Ukraine is not going to wait for 20 more years to solve this legal issue. I mean, as a professor said, I mean, there is a special circumstance. That's special circumstances that this money can work for the benefit of Ukrainian people who are defending themselves, and Russia is killing Ukrainian people. So what do you have to have more to justify this kind of movement?
Lee?
I think from a moral point of view, I don't think anybody disagrees. I mean, I think all Europeans, of course, think that the moral right thing to do would be to use these funds. I don't think we should overlook the legal arguments, because I think there is a risk if we say that because Russia acts contrary to international law, we can do the same. And that's a bit of a slippery slope in international politics. So for me, I would say the most important thing is that they find the right legal basis. And then, of course, after that, I know that there's also some concerns regarding the effects on the euro system, the financial system. But if these concerns, you know, if we're able to address them, then of course these funds should be used to support Ukraine.
I mean, who would be hit by this confiscation, let's say? Is Putin and the oligarchs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that another reason to say, okay, these are war criminals, they should be in The Hague for their
That's
for
why
their
Russia
trial.
is acting as it's acting, because there's never been attribution for any of its attacks to its neighbors. Not in Chechnya within Russia itself, not in Georgia, not in Syria, not in Ukraine. because they never paid the price. Now it's time for them to pay the price so that they learn to behave.
Yeah, if you want.
No, I'm just saying that there are some moments in the history that you have to act now and quickly. And we are witnessing not only acts of crimes in Ukraine, but these are war crimes. These are genocide. So that has to be addressed somehow. And those people they are in a desperate need of money, and not only the army, but also the people, the families who were affected by the Russian soldiers. So they deserve for this money, and European Union has to be quick and decisive.
I want to raise another point that has come up in all this debate on defense, and that is nuclear weapons. The Prime Minister of your country has sort of voiced interest. The French president has said, well, we might spread the nuclear umbrella of France across Central Europe. How do you feel about this?
I think this is a very dangerous development. I do not wish for Europe to see an arms race in terms of nuclear weapons. That would constitute a danger to all of us. So even though, I mean, as we have discussed earlier, I do think it's important for Europe to enhance its own military capabilities, to do more together, to redirect the funding and so on. But nuclear weapons, I do not think we want to see an arms race in Europe regarding that. So there, I personally, I would wish for Europe still to be a voice that underlines the dangers of those kinds of weapons, dangers that we also have been reminded of regarding the war in Ukraine.
Yeah. That's all we have time for. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, a man on a mission to wreck transatlantic trade. Trump's crusade against the European Union. Don't go away. Welcome back to Brussels, my love. Our guests are still Lee Anderson, Krzysztof Śmiszek, and Pekka Toveri. Donald Trump hates the European Union. According to him, the bloc was only created to screw the United States. Now he's on a mission to seek payback for past decades during which the Europeans took advantage of America, as he believes it. This week, Trump slapped 25% global tariffs on steel and aluminum and threatened to escalate more. The EU responded in kind and announced a two-stage retaliation covering 26 billion euros in EU exports. Is Europe prepared for an economic roller coaster that could end up in a global recession, Krzysztof?
Well, I think that nobody is prepared for this kind of tariff wars. And tariff wars never work. They work only for the wealthiest. Tariff wars are detrimental to usual, average, regular people because of the higher costs of almost everything. I'm very much afraid that this is just a beginning of the long list of tariff tools that Trump is going to use. I'm very much afraid that the next area, besides steel and aluminium, will be pharmaceuticals, will be automotives, will be agriculture products, and this is going to be hell for not only for Europeans, but also for Americans who were voting for Trump, hoping that he will deliver lower prices of eggs or whatever groceries they buy on a daily basis. I'm pretty sure that it is not going to work. And all the costs will be paid by regular citizens.
We're seeing already reactions in the United States itself. Consumer sentiment is down. The markets are in kind of disarray. So there's the Trump bump that we saw right after the election is now a Trump slump. Ursula von der Leyen said everybody is losing here. Everybody is going to be the loser in this. Where can we look for support as European Union if our most important trading partner is sort of derailing?
I think Europe should once again look at itself, actually. Like, what do we need? One problem for the European economy is that we are quite dependent, actually, on exports, on that kind of trade. If you compare to the US, for them, the internal market is more important, actually, than in the EU for their economic growth, for employment, and so on. So one thing for the EU could be to think about how can we strengthen internal demand, an internal market to lessen the dependency and make it harder for Trump to kind of try and affect Europe through these tariffs. That would mean, for example, strengthening wages, for example, like putting more emphasis on that in Europe, on the possibility of people, their consumer strength. And then also when Europe now thinks about, and the EU, and how we answer to Trump. Because the first reactions of the EU was to go back to the same way they responded in, I think it was 2018, with Bourbon and Harley-Davidsons in jeans.
Yeah.
I think EU at this moment should be ready also to tax these big digital social media corporations based in the US, for example, to put taxes on them and through this try and affect the people, we all know who they are,
that was
in the vicinity
by the Polish government a few days ago.
Of Trump.
Right.
Yeah.
Pekka, what is Trump's endgame here? How far is he willing to go?
Well, first of all, his statement about EU shows how much he understands about these issues. He's a businessman. He don't understand too much about the international policies and what has made the United States great. But his negotiation tactics seem to be borrowed from Russians. You know, demand impossible, double your demand, and if you get even half what you started with, you're still a winner. And we've seen many times that he started with very big demands, and then when he's answered with the same measures, he's coming back very fast.
Yeah.
The negotiation with with Mexico and Canada shows it. And when you look for his first term, what he actually achieved.
For more answers on this, we wanted to pick some academic brain here. What is the best response to aggressive US tariffs? So we spoke to Sander Tordoir, economist at the Center for European Reform. Here's what he told us. Take a listen.
We're already in a trade war, not necessarily Europe, but between China and the US, I think there is real pressure on the global trading system. At the very least, I would think that we will impose tariffs on politically sensitive goods like Tesla vehicles, which happen to be owned by somebody who happens to be quite close to the US president. I think that is the smart solution, is to hit particular products that are particularly sensitive for Republican politicians. I think it shows the Europeans that you do not need to take the knee to Mr. Trump. You can actually stand up for yourself.
Yeah, that sounds like a very confident plan. And hitting Tesla, is that too obvious or too personal, or is that...
I support that. We actually already suggested this in Finland also, that one way to respond could actually be to hit Tesla, which would hit Elon Musk directly. And I think the other option would be to hit these social media digital companies through taxes, for example. Either way, I think the point is that for EU, it makes no sense to respond in a broad way, to go into a trade war with the US in the same way that they have done. But for the EU, it's smarter to try and do direct, kind of pointed action against these very rich people, these oligarchs who are working with Trump.
Yeah.
Well, two things. I mean, I fully agree with Lee in terms of digital tax. A few days ago, Polish Deputy Prime Minister responsible for digitalization, he said, like, my ministry is working on introducing the digital tax, and that sparked a huge international problem between Poland and US government. This is one thing. I mean, there are smart ways of responding, and the second way of defending ourselves is looking for other markets. I mean, Canada already signaled that is very much willing to tighten their trade relations between European Union and Canada. So why not use this opportunity, especially that Canada is also under pressure?
And what about Tesla?
Well, Tesla, I mean, let's boycott it.
They're already hit by a 50% almost slump in Europe, right?
Yes, I don't like Musk too much either, but I wouldn't go too much to personally. We should look the big picture where we can get the effects, but also use the possibility. Now we have a chance to be the stability in the world. We can be a partner with whom you can make win-win deals, not only with America First deals, and we will hold our agreements over the next presidential elections too.
All right. On that point, we can close the conversation. Thank you so much to our guests, and thank you for watching. See you soon on Euronews. Hello and welcome to Brussels, my love. My guests are the members of the European Parliament, Krzysztof Śmiszek from the Socialists and Democrats, Becca Tovary from the European People's Party, and Lee Anderson from the Left Group. A few days ago, the European Commission unveiled a roadmap for women's rights, the only mention of equality in its entire work programme. Last term, key legislation for equality was passed, including the Pay Transparency Directive, new EU rules on gender balance on corporate boards, and the Work-Life Balance Initiative. This time, however, equality doesn't appear to be a priority. Yet Europe remains far from achieving gender equality, with persistent pay gaps, gender-based violence, and unequal domestic labour still posing major challenges. There seems to be a disturbing global trend to call into question some of the achievements of the struggle for women's rights, a kind of cultural rollback. Do you see that too? And if yes, where is this coming from, Lee?
I think we see it everywhere. I see it at home, I see it in the European Parliament, we see it in the Commission work programme, as you mentioned, and it's also very clear where it comes from. It comes from the far and the extreme right. Those are the political forces that are behind this, rollback that we now can see. And it's very unfortunate to see that, for example, a commission where you have very strong representation of commissioners with the background in EPP, that they don't hold back against this pressure and keep giving real legislative proposals, for example, in the field of gender equality.
When you say this, you see that at home. You mean Finland?
Yes, we have seen it in Finland as well. We have seen it in this hate speech against many female politicians. We see it in, we have a huge problem with gender-based violence still, and we still have a lot of work to do also in regards to the labour market.
Do you agree?
Well, we have a problem, yes. We have a problem on violence against women, and we need to do more on that. And overall in Europe, we see that, violence creates violence, and we have a war going on in Ukraine, and that forces us to put more efforts to protecting democracy. You look Russia. Russia is the dictatorship where wife beating is legal.
Is it legal or illegal?
It's legal.
Legal.
Yes. So do we want Russia to dominate Europe? No, definitely not, because then everybody is sabotage. We have to put effort to stop that.
But let's talk about the situation in the EU. I think that's much closer to us.
One of the values of the treaties is gender equality and human rights. So this is a shame and shock and disgrace for this term of the European Commission, that there is no ambitions in terms of achieving gender equality. Women earn less than men. There's still a problem with combining a private life and a work life. So I don't know why the Commission is so withdrawn. And few weeks ago, Ursula von der Leyen announced that European Commission is going to withdraw the anti-discrimination horizontal directive, the proposal, which has been discussed in Brussels for the last 16 years. Why? I mean, this directive, this proposal probably is the first victim of this phenomenon of the regulation in Brussels, and this term of the European Commission is not ambitious at all.
You mentioned the Commission. The Commission reaffirms its commitment to fully realizing an equal society in Europe. The initiative was presented by Hadja Labib, the Commissioner in charge of equality, a former Belgian foreign minister. Take a listen. Here's what she said.
In 2025, 1 in 3 women in the EU have experienced physical or sexual violence, and this is a poison. In 2025, women are still not paid the same as men for the same job. Women are paid an average 12% less per hour. This is slightly better than last year. We are slowly progressing, but it is still not right. Gender equality is not up for debate. It should be as natural as the air we breathe. Questioning women's rights is questioning progress.
First of all, Hadja Labib is in charge of equality and preparedness and crisis management. Looks like equality doesn't deserve its own portfolio here.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one sign of how the attitudes have changed in this mandate. I believe she has a strong will to enhance and work for these topics. But the problem is that if you only do it with roadmaps and strategies or policy papers, the real impact will be very little.
Well,
we need also concrete legislative proposals.
Take the pay gap, right? We've been talking about this
for ages,
over and over and over again, even on this program. Why is it so difficult to bring corporate Europe to pay women and men the same amount of money?
Look what has happened in the last term. So many legislative initiatives have been passed. It's not only the gender-based violence directive, it's also women on board, it's also standards for equality institutions.
On this pay gap.
On the pay gap?
On the pay gap, I mean, the business, the big business is not very happy to be obliged by binding provisions that force them to make equality a reality. You know, words are beautiful, and you know, roadmaps are beautiful and are necessary. But we need legislation, and we need enforcement of this legislation, and we need also sanctions. Whether the big corporate, and not only big corporates violate this value, they need to be sanctioned.
Commission obviously continuing on the old roadmap going forward, and this is the problem we have nowadays, because we have dozens of things which there are people saying that this is the most important thing we have to do now. Well, democracy is attacked. We are fighting for survival between Russia and the United States. So the Commission has to
that's
put
not a
effort
reason
somewhere.
for companies to pay less.
I have to disagree with Pekka on this. I was a minister during COVID in the Finnish government. And when the pandemic started, they did a decision that we will enact a government program, although we have a pandemic. Why did we do that? Because we thought that if we stop doing everything else to develop society because of this crisis, people will pay 2 times for the crisis. They will pay for the effect of the pandemic, or in this case, the war and the geopolitical situation, and they will pay the price of everything that we didn't do for gender equality or for a better labor market or for the social policies during that time.
That is a great conclusion. We've reached the end of Brussels, my love. Thank you to our guests today and to our viewers at home. If you want to continue the conversation on any topic, write to brusselsmylove@euronews.com or contact us on social media. That's it for today. I'm Stefan Grobe. Have an excellent week. Take care and see you soon.